He saved the Apache chief's daughter, and the chief offered him something no one would dare imagine. John had always been drawn to adventure. Ever since he was a child, he loved exploring forests, climbing hills, and discovering places few people dared to visit. Unlike most people, John didn't mind being alone in the wilderness. In fact, he felt more alive there than anywhere else. One morning, he woke up early with the sun just beginning to paint the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The air was crisp, and the wind carried a faint scent of pine trees mixed with the dry, earthy smell of the canyon. He packed his bag carefully, checking ropes, water, and some food. Today, he planned to explore a remote canyon that he had read about in old maps. According to stories he had heard from local guides, the canyon was both beautiful and dangerous. Few people dared to enter, and those who did often underestimated the terrain. As he walked deeper into the canyon, the walls on either side grew taller and steeper. The sunlight barely reached the bottom, leaving shadows that danced as the wind whistled through narrow openings. Birds chirped in the distance, and occasionally John spotted a deer or rabbit darting among the rocks. He felt a mixture of excitement and caution. He knew that one wrong step could be risky, but that risk was part of the thrill for him. John was so focused on observing the beauty around him that he didn't immediately hear the faint cries for help. They were soft at first, almost blending with the natural sounds of the canyon, but there was something urgent in them, a kind of desperation that pulled at his attention. He stopped in his tracks, listening carefully. The sound came again, this time louder and more distinct. Someone was calling for help. John's heart began to race. He wasn't sure what he would find, but he knew he couldn't ignore it. Without thinking twice, he started moving toward the sound, following the echo of the voice. The path became steeper and more dangerous as he climbed. Loose rocks and narrow ledges made every step risky. His hands gripped the rock carefully, testing each hold before putting his weight on it. The cries grew louder, and soon he realized the voice was coming from a cliffside just above a small waterfall. As he looked closer, he saw a young girl, her clothes torn and dust-covered, clinging to the edge of a jagged rock. She was barely holding on, and any moment she could slip and fall. John's heart pounded in his chest. He had never seen anyone in such a perilous situation, and he knew that without immediate help she would not survive. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "I can do this," he whispered quietly. He carefully assessed the path. There were no ropes or safety equipment, only his own skill and courage. He moved slowly, testing every step, inching closer to the girl. As he approached, he could see the fear in her eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice was shaking. "Don't worry, I'll get you," John called softly, hoping to calm her. Reaching her was more difficult than he expected. The rocks were slippery from the morning dew, and some of them seemed ready to give way under even the slightest pressure. John's muscles ached, but he refused to give up. Finally, after what felt like hours, he managed to get close enough to hold out his hand. "Grab my hand," he shouted. The girl hesitated, fear written all over her face, but she could see the determination in John's eyes. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and grasped his hand. He held on tightly, pulling her inch by inch until she was safely on a more stable ledge. They were not entirely safe yet. The ledge was narrow, and the drop on either side was terrifying. John knew they needed to get back to solid ground. He led the girl carefully, one step at a time, checking every foothold. She followed his instructions, trusting him completely. "We're going to make it," he said, even though his own heart was still racing. Together, they moved along the cliff, slowly but surely, until they finally reached a flat area where the rocks were solid. Both of them collapsed briefly, catching their breath and trying to calm their racing hearts. The girl's eyes were wide with awe and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but the fear had faded, replaced by relief. John smiled gently. "You're safe now," he said. "Just stay close to me." He noticed her clothes were torn and she was covered in scratches and dust, but otherwise she seemed unharmed. He helped her to a small stream nearby, letting her drink some water and rinse off the dust and sweat. The girl looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. She said nothing, but her eyes spoke volumes. It wasn't long before John realized where he might be. The girl had an air of dignity and confidence, and the surroundings suggested she belonged to a local tribe. He had heard stories about the Apache people who lived in these canyons, known for their bravery and strong connection to the land. He understood that rescuing her would not only save her life but could also have consequences, depending on how her tribe reacted to an outsider intervening. John's mind raced. He knew he had to be careful, respectful, and humble if he wanted to make a good impression. With the girl walking close beside him, John began the careful journey back to the village. He spoke softly, asking her questions about her name and where she lived, trying to keep her calm and distracted from the ordeal they had just endured. She eventually introduced herself as Ayana, and John realized he had never met anyone with such quiet courage. Despite the fear she had faced moments ago, she was composed, aware, and incredibly brave. Their journey was slow, with many pauses to rest or navigate tricky terrain, but gradually the familiar sights of the village appeared on the horizon. As they approached, the sounds of the village grew louder: laughter, the rhythm of daily life, and the calls of other villagers. Yana's face lit up with relief. John knew that he had done something truly meaningful. He had risked his own safety to save someone in mortal danger, and now he was about to face the reaction of an entire tribe. The village elders and the chief's family were the first to notice them. John could see the surprise and tension in their eyes as they recognized an outsider walking with Ayana. He immediately lowered his gaze respectfully, understanding the gravity of the situation. This was not a casual encounter. He had entered their world and saved someone precious to them. He spoke gently, explaining how he had found her and helped her down safely. The chief, a tall and commanding figure, stepped forward, studying John closely. His eyes were sharp, full of intelligence and authority. John felt the weight of those eyes but maintained his composure. Ayana ran ahead to her father, crying out with relief and gratitude. The chief's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained cautious. John remained at a distance, showing respect. He knew that actions spoke louder than words in moments like this. By helping Ayana without hesitation, he had already shown his character, but now he had to demonstrate humility and understanding. The chief motioned for John to approach. Every step felt significant. The village had gone quiet, all eyes on this unexpected visitor who had shown such courage. John's heart pounded, but he knew that he had done the right thing. He had saved a life, and in doing so, he had taken a step into a world very different from his own, a world of honor, bravery, and ancient traditions. Little did he know, this encounter was only the beginning of a remarkable story, one that would change his life forever. For now, though, he focused on the simple truth. He had saved Ayana and she was safe. That was enough for this moment. After the rescue, John felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He had saved Ayana, the Apache chief's daughter, from a dangerous cliffside, but he knew the hardest part was just beginning. While he had acted with courage and compassion, he was still an outsider in a world where trust was earned, not given. The Apache tribe was known for its strength, unity, and loyalty to one another. Any stranger who entered their territory, even with good intentions, was viewed with caution. John understood this and he walked carefully, his head slightly bowed in respect as the villagers and elders studied him silently. Yana ran ahead to her father, the chief, and threw her arms around him. Tears of relief and gratitude streamed down her face as she explained how John had saved her. The chief listened attentively, his expression unreadable. He was a tall man, with deep lines etched into his face from years of wisdom and responsibility. His eyes were sharp, observing John every step of the way as if trying to understand the heart of this stranger who had risked his life for his daughter. The village fell silent, waiting for the chief's response. Finally, the chief spoke, his voice deep and steady. "You have saved my daughter," he said, his tone carrying both authority and curiosity. "That is a great thing, but who are you and why are you here?" John took a deep breath, bowing slightly. "My name is John," he replied. "I am a traveler. I did not come here to cause harm. I only saw someone in danger and I could not leave her there. I wanted to help." His words were simple, but they came from his heart. The chief studied him for a long moment. Around them, the villagers whispered to each other, some in awe, some in caution. Stories of strangers with selfish intentions were not uncommon, and trust was something earned through deeds over time. John felt the weight of their scrutiny but remained calm. He understood that this moment could determine how he would be received in their village. Yana, still holding onto her father, spoke softly, her voice filled with emotion. "Father, he saved me. He risked his life for me. He did not hesitate, even when it was dangerous." Her words carried a quiet conviction that touched the hearts of those listening. The chief's eyes softened slightly as he looked at his daughter, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. Then he turned his attention back to John. "Your actions are brave," he said. "Bravery is important, but courage alone does not make one trustworthy. We will see who you are through your actions among us." John nodded, understanding the weight of the chief's words. He had entered a community with its own rules, traditions, and values. To earn their trust, he needed to show humility, respect, and a willingness to learn. Over the next few days, he stayed in the village, helping in small ways wherever he could. He carried water for the elders, assisted in gathering firewood, and even helped repair some damaged structures. Each task was simple, but John performed them with care and dedication. His actions spoke louder than words, slowly earning the quiet respect of the villagers. Iana stayed close to him, offering small gestures of friendship. She showed him where the best berries grew, how to identify the tracks of animals, and how to move carefully across the rocky terrain. John listened and learned eagerly. The more time he spent with her and the villagers, the more he realized how rich and deep their culture was. He saw a community bound not only by survival, but by love, respect, and shared traditions that had been passed down for generations. Even as John earned the villagers' trust, there were still moments of tension. Some of the younger men whispered among themselves, wary of an outsider who had suddenly entered their lives. They watched him closely during hunts and daily routines, assessing whether he truly belonged or was merely passing through. John noticed their glances but did not react with frustration or defensiveness. Instead, he focused on proving himself through consistent action, showing that his intentions were genuine. One evening, as the sun began to set and painted the sky in deep oranges and purples, John sat by the fire with Ayana and a few villagers. The crackling flames reflected in their eyes, creating an atmosphere of warmth and reflection. Ayana spoke softly about the history of her people, their struggles, their triumphs, and the lessons passed down by the elders. John listened intently, realizing that this was more than just a village. It was a living story of courage, resilience, and wisdom. The chief observed John quietly from a distance. Though he did not speak, his eyes conveyed thoughtfulness. He watched how John interacted with the villagers, how he helped without seeking praise, and how he listened with genuine interest. Trust, the chief knew, was earned slowly, and he was beginning to see the qualities in John that went beyond bravery. There was patience, humility, and respect, traits that were valued above all else in his tribe. Days turned into a week, and the initial tension began to fade. John became part of the daily rhythm of the village, participating in communal meals, learning their language, and even joining in some of their traditional dances. Each experience brought him closer to understanding their values and traditions. He realized that bravery alone was not enough. One had to act with integrity, show respect for the community, and demonstrate a willingness to learn from others. Iana became his guide and companion. She taught him the subtle ways of communication within the tribe, how to read gestures and expressions, and how to approach situations with care. John admired her intelligence and grace. She was not only brave but also wise beyond her years, a reflection of the strength that her father had nurtured in the tribe. Together, they explored areas around the village, finding hidden streams, observing wildlife, and sharing stories of their lives. One afternoon, while gathering herbs near the edge of the village, John noticed a group of young men watching him from a distance. He approached them calmly, offering a small smile and a gesture of peace. Slowly, they approached, curious about his intentions. John spoke honestly, sharing his admiration for the tribe and his desire to learn and contribute. Over time, these young men, who had initially been suspicious, began to see John as someone worthy of respect. His consistent actions, humility, and willingness to help had begun to break down barriers that words alone could not. The chief finally spoke to John one evening after the sun had dipped below the horizon. "You have shown patience, humility, and respect," he said. "These are the qualities that make one trustworthy. You have saved my daughter, yes, but more importantly, you have shown that your heart is honorable. Few outsiders would take such care to learn from us and act with such sincerity." John bowed his head, deeply moved by the chief's words. He understood that this was not merely praise but recognition of something rare, acceptance into a community that valued integrity above all else. Even as John began to feel a sense of belonging, he knew that his journey was far from over. The bond he had begun to form with Ayana and the tribe was delicate, built on trust and mutual respect. Every day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove himself. John embraced each moment, understanding that earning the trust of an entire community required more than courage. It required consistent, genuine action, empathy, and respect for the ways of others. By the end of the second week, John could feel a shift in the village. Villagers who had once watched him with suspicion now greeted him warmly. Children ran to him with laughter, and elders nodded in approval as he assisted in daily tasks. Even the young men who had been cautious began to include him in their activities, sharing stories, hunting tips, and playful challenges. John realized that trust, once earned, had a power far greater than he had imagined. It created bonds, opened doors, and transformed strangers into allies and friends. One evening, as the sky turned a deep indigo and stars began to shine above the canyon, John sat with Ayana by the edge of the village. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for saving me, but for showing respect to all of us. Many outsiders would not have cared to understand us, but you did." John smiled, humbled by her words. "I only did what felt right," he replied. "You and your people trusted me, and I wanted to honor that trust." In that quiet moment, John realized that the rescue had been only the beginning. The real journey was not just about bravery in a dangerous canyon. It was about earning respect, building trust, and understanding a world so different from his own. He knew that his actions in the coming days would shape not only how the tribe saw him, but also how he would remember this place for the rest of his life. As the days passed, John felt increasingly connected to the Apache village and its people. What had begun as a dangerous rescue had grown into something much deeper. He was no longer just an outsider who happened to save the chief's daughter. He was becoming a part of their daily lives. Every morning, the sun rose over the canyon with a golden glow, painting the cliffs in colors that seemed almost magical. John would wake early, helping to prepare for the day, and join the villagers in their routines. He carried water from the nearby stream, helped tend to small gardens, and assisted in repairing structures that had weathered the harsh winds of the canyon. Through these small but meaningful acts, he was slowly weaving himself into the fabric of the community. Yana, the chief's daughter, remained a constant companion. She had a quiet strength and intelligence that fascinated John. Each day, she guided him through the village's customs, teaching him to observe and respect even the smallest details. She showed him how to move silently through the forest, how to listen to the sounds of nature, and how to track the movements of animals. John was amazed at her knowledge and how effortlessly she shared it. He realized that bravery alone was not enough to survive here. Understanding and wisdom were equally important. Their bond grew with each passing day. They shared quiet moments by the stream, speaking about their lives, dreams, and fears. Yana spoke about her family, the history of the Apache people, and the lessons she had learned from her father. John, in turn, shared stories of his travels, the places he had seen, and the people he had met. Though they came from very different worlds, they discovered a shared sense of curiosity and respect for life. John admired Ayana's courage, not only in the face of danger, but also in the way she carried herself with grace and confidence. The villagers began to notice the growing friendship between John and Ayana. At first, there was curiosity and some caution. Outsiders were rare, and a close connection with the chief's daughter was significant. Yet, John's humility and sincerity gradually earned their approval. He did not seek attention or favor. He simply lived alongside them, helping where he could, learning from their customs, and showing genuine care for the people around him. Slowly, the whispers of suspicion transformed into nods of respect. John's presence also brought subtle changes to the village routines. The elders observed him carefully, noting his willingness to learn and participate. During communal meals, he listened attentively, showing respect for traditions and stories that had been passed down through generations. He joined in dances and ceremonies, never imitating but participating with genuine enthusiasm. His efforts did not go unnoticed. The chief, in particular, watched John closely, evaluating not just his bravery but also his character, his patience, and his ability to integrate into the community. One afternoon, as the sun warmed the canyon walls, John and Yana walked along a narrow ridge overlooking the village. From this vantage point, the village seemed alive with movement and purpose. Children played near the stream, elders worked on weaving and pottery, and the sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air. John felt a sense of awe. He had never imagined that he could feel so connected to a place he had only recently discovered. "Amazing, isn't it?" Yana said softly, her eyes reflecting the sunlight. "This land has been home to my people for generations. Every rock, every tree, every stream has a story. It is part of who we are." John nodded, feeling the truth in her words. "I can see that," he replied, "and it's incredible how much care you all put into preserving it." Yana smiled, appreciating his sincerity. "It is our responsibility," she said. "We live in harmony with the land and we protect it as part of our heritage." Over time, John began to understand the subtle lessons that the tribe lived by every day. He learned about respect, patience, and balance. The Apache people valued actions over words, and trust was something earned slowly. Every interaction, no matter how small, carried meaning. John realized that he had much to learn, not just about survival in the wilderness, but about human connection, honor, and the strength of community. Evenings were a special time in the village. The air grew cooler, and the sky transformed into a canvas of deep blues and purples. Villagers would gather around fires, sharing stories, songs, and traditions. John listened intently, absorbing the wisdom and history of a people whose lives were intertwined with the land. He admired the way the elders spoke, their words carrying lessons for everyone who would listen. Each story, each song, seemed to carry a message about courage, respect, and the importance of living honorably. One night, as the village gathered around the central fire, the chief spoke to John directly. "You have shown courage and respect, and you have helped my people in many ways. But more than that, you have learned to listen, to observe, and to understand. These qualities are rare among outsiders. You have proven that you do not seek glory or reward, only to do what is right." John bowed his head humbly, deeply moved by the chief's words. He understood that this was not just praise, it was recognition of his integrity and the trust he had begun to earn. In the days that followed, John found himself becoming more involved in the village life. He joined hunts, learning to move quietly and track animals with patience and skill. He helped gather herbs and medicinal plants, observing how the villagers used natural resources with care and respect. Each day brought new lessons and new opportunities to connect with the people around him. John felt a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced before. He was no longer just a traveler passing through. He was part of something larger, a community bound by trust, honor, and shared responsibility. Gianna continued to guide him, not only in practical matters, but also in understanding the deeper values of her people. She taught him about the importance of family, the significance of traditions, and the strength that comes from living in harmony with others. John listened, absorbing every word, feeling a growing respect and admiration for her wisdom. Their friendship deepened, built on shared experiences, trust, and mutual understanding. The chief watched this growing bond quietly. He saw the way John treated Ayana and the villagers, with respect, humility, and care. He observed how John learned without arrogance, how he contributed without seeking recognition, and how he remained calm and thoughtful even in challenging situations. The chief realized that John was not only brave, but also wise, patient, and honorable, a rare combination that earned the admiration of the tribe. One day, while helping to repair a fence near the edge of the village, John noticed the chief approaching. His heart raced slightly, wondering what he might say. The chief stopped beside him, watching silently as John worked. Finally, he spoke. "You have done more than save my daughter," he said. "You have shown respect, humility, and understanding. These are qualities that matter more than courage alone. You have begun to earn a place among my people." John felt a deep sense of honor. He bowed his head, understanding the gravity of the chief's words. It was rare for an outsider to be recognized in this way, and he felt a profound responsibility to continue proving himself worthy. As the sun set over the canyon that evening, John and Ayana sat together by the stream. The water reflected the colors of the sky, and the air was filled with the sounds of the village settling for the night. "I am proud of you," Ayana said softly, "not just for saving me, but for the way you have become part of our lives. You have shown that your heart is true and that you respect who we are." John smiled, humbled by her words. "I have learned so much from all of you," he replied. "This is not just about bravery, it's about understanding, respect, and connection. You have taught me more than I could have imagined." In that quiet moment, John realized how far he had come. What had begun as a dangerous rescue had transformed into a journey of discovery, trust, and friendship. He had faced challenges, learned new ways of living, and earned the respect of people who had once been strangers. Most importantly, he had formed a bond with Ayana and the tribe that was growing stronger with each passing day. John knew that his journey was far from over. The bond he had begun to form with Ayana and the tribe was just the beginning of something much larger. There were lessons still to be learned, challenges to face, and opportunities to grow. But he also knew that he had taken an important step, one that required courage, humility, and the willingness to open his heart to a world very different from his own. As night fell and the village settled under the stars, John felt a deep sense of peace. He was no longer just an outsider. He was part of a living, breathing community, one that had welcomed him and allowed him to earn their trust. The journey ahead promised new adventures, challenges, and surprises, but for the first time, John felt that he truly belonged. And in that belonging, he found a courage and strength that went far beyond the cliffs and canyons he had once explored alone. Life in the village had become a rhythm for John. Each day was filled with learning, helping, and observing the traditions that shaped the Apache way of life. He had grown to admire not only the natural beauty of the land, but also the people who lived in harmony with it. John had never felt so connected to a community, and he knew that his life was changing in ways he could never have imagined. Yet, despite this sense of belonging, he sensed that the chief had something significant in mind. There was a quiet weight in the chief's gaze whenever he looked at John, a thoughtful presence that made John curious and at the same time slightly anxious. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the village in warm golden light, the chief called John aside. The chief's manner was calm, yet commanding, and every step he took seemed deliberate. John followed him to a quiet area near the edge of the village, where the cliffs dropped into a canyon below. The wind carried a gentle chill, and the sound of the river flowing far below created a serene background. The chief motioned for John to sit on a flat rock, and John complied, lowering himself carefully onto the smooth surface. He could feel his heart racing, unsure of what was about to happen, yet filled with anticipation. The chief sat opposite him, folding his hands in his lap. For a moment there was silence, and John wondered what the words would be. The chief's eyes were steady, deep, and intelligent. John could sense the weight of the decision that rested in the chief's mind. Finally, the chief spoke, his voice calm but filled with gravity. "John," he began, "you have shown bravery, respect, and humility. You did not seek reward for saving my daughter, and you have spent these days learning about our ways. You have earned the trust of my people. Few outsiders are ever granted such trust." John listened intently, feeling the significance of each word. The chief paused, as if weighing his next words carefully. "There is something I wish to offer you," he continued. "Something no one outside our tribe has ever been given. It is not a gift of gold or land, nor a temporary honor. It is something far deeper, a bond that links you to my people and to our way of life. It is a place among us, a life shared with those who have welcomed you." John's eyes widened slightly, and he felt a mixture of awe, disbelief, and humility. He had never imagined such an offer, and he knew it was extraordinary. The chief leaned closer, his voice softer but still commanding. "This offer is not given lightly. It carries responsibility. It is a commitment to live with honor, to respect the land, and to protect and support our people. It is more than a title or a privilege. It is a life intertwined with the lives of those who have chosen to trust you. Few outsiders have ever been considered, and fewer still have been accepted." John felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He understood that this was not just a gesture of gratitude. It was an invitation to become part of a world very different from his own. John took a deep breath, letting the significance of the offer sink in. He thought about the days he had spent in the village, the lessons he had learned, and the bonds he had formed. He thought about Ayana, whose courage and wisdom had touched him deeply, and the villagers who had gradually accepted him as one of their own. He realized that this offer was not just about him. It was about trust, respect, and the connection he had nurtured with a community that valued integrity above all else. The chief continued, explaining the responsibilities that came with the offer. John would be expected to participate fully in village life, to learn and uphold their traditions, and to contribute to the welfare of the community. He would be considered part of the tribe, with the rights and responsibilities of those who had been born into it. The chief's words were clear and deliberate, emphasizing that this was not a simple reward but a lifelong commitment. John listened carefully, understanding the seriousness and honor of what was being offered. For a long moment, there was silence. John's mind raced as he considered the implications. Accepting the offer meant leaving behind the life he had known, stepping into a world that was both unfamiliar and demanding. It meant embracing a culture, a language, and a way of living that he had only begun to understand. Yet it also offered something he had never imagined: belonging, acceptance, a chance to be part of something larger than himself, a community bound by trust, respect, and shared values. Finally, John spoke, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I am deeply honored," he said. "I never expected such a gift, and I am humbled by your trust. I accept your offer, and I will do my best to honor it. I will live with respect, contribute to your people, and learn all that I can." "Thank you for this incredible opportunity." The chief nodded, his expression showing a mixture of satisfaction and approval. "Then you are welcome among us," he said. "Your place is here with those who have chosen to trust you. Remember always that trust is sacred, and honor is earned every day." John felt a profound sense of relief and gratitude. The chief's offer was not just an acknowledgement of his bravery, but a recognition of his character, integrity, and willingness to learn. It was a bond that could not be measured by material wealth or temporary praise. It was a connection to a community that had welcomed him, tested him, and ultimately accepted him as one of their own. John understood that this was a turning point in his life, a moment that would shape his future in ways he could not yet fully comprehend. The days that followed were filled with a renewed sense of purpose. John embraced his new role in the village with dedication and humility. He participated in daily tasks with greater responsibility, helping in ways that directly supported the community. He continued to learn the language, the traditions, and the customs of the tribe, gaining a deeper understanding of the wisdom that had guided them for generations. Every action, every choice, was now guided by a commitment to honor the trust that had been placed in him. Iana remained by his side, offering guidance, friendship, and encouragement. She shared her knowledge of the land, the animals, and the traditions that shaped their daily lives. John appreciated her patience and wisdom, realizing that she had played an essential role in helping him understand the values and responsibilities of his new life. Their bond grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. Together, they explored the canyon, learning from each other and deepening their connection with the land and its people. The villagers also responded positively to John's acceptance of the chief's offer. Those who had been cautious or skeptical began to see him as a committed member of the community. Children sought his guidance and stories. Elders welcomed his participation in daily tasks, and the younger men included him in their hunts and training. John realized that acceptance was not simply a gift. It was something that had to be lived and proven every day. His actions, dedication, and respect continued to reinforce the bond he had earned. One evening, as the sun set over the canyon, John stood with the chief on a high ridge overlooking the village. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, and the river below shimmered in the fading light. The chief spoke quietly, his voice carrying wisdom and authority. "Remember, John," he said, "trust is sacred. You have been given a place among us, but it is not permanent unless you honor it with your actions. Live with respect, courage, and humility, and you will always be welcomed here." John nodded, understanding the depth of the chief's words. They were not just instructions, they were guidance for a lifetime. That night, as John reflected by the fire with Iana, he felt a profound sense of belonging. The journey that had begun with a perilous rescue had led him to a community that valued courage, integrity, and respect above all else. He realized that the offer from the chief was not just about being accepted. It was about responsibility, connection, and living a life that honored the trust of others. John knew that his life had been transformed in ways he could never have imagined. He also understood that this was only the beginning. Acceptance into the tribe was a lifelong journey, filled with learning, challenges, and growth. But John was ready. He had faced danger, earned trust, and built connections that would last a lifetime. The chief's offer was more than an honor. It was a new beginning, a path that would lead him to experiences, lessons, and relationships that were beyond what he had ever known. As he sat by the fire that night, watching the stars appear one by one over the canyon, John felt a deep sense of peace. He was no longer just an outsider. He was part of something greater. The bond he had earned with the chief, Ayana, and the entire village was a gift beyond measure. And in that moment, he knew that his courage, humility, and willingness to learn had opened the door to a life he could have never imagined. A life full of meaning, connection, and honor. John's life had changed completely. What had begun as a dangerous climb to save Ayana had transformed into a journey of trust, friendship, and belonging. The chief's offer to become part of the Apache tribe had given him an opportunity unlike anything he could have imagined. It was not just an honor. It was a responsibility and a chance to live a life guided by courage, respect, and integrity. From that moment on, John committed himself fully to the community that had welcomed him and to the people who had begun to feel like family. Each day brought new lessons. John learned more about the traditions, values, and daily routines of the tribe. He helped with farming, hunting, and gathering medicinal herbs, always paying attention to the ways in which the Apache people treated the land with care and reverence. He noticed that nothing was wasted and that every action, no matter how small, contributed to the balance of the community and the environment. John's respect for this way of life grew deeper with each passing day, and he felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. Ayana continued to guide him, teaching him the subtleties of communication, movement, and survival. They explored hidden valleys, crossed streams, and climbed ridges together, each adventure strengthening their bond. John admired her courage and wisdom even more. She was strong, but also compassionate and insightful. John realized that Ayana had been trained by the tribe to see beyond danger, to understand people, and to act with both courage and kindness. Her guidance helped him adapt and thrive, and their friendship evolved into mutual respect and deep admiration. The villagers had fully accepted John into their community. Children ran to him with smiles, calling out his name, while elders welcomed his assistance and listened to his ideas during communal discussions. John understood that acceptance was not simply a gift. It was something earned and maintained through consistent action, care, and respect. Each day, he worked to live up to the trust the chief and the tribe had placed in him. Over time, he became known not only for his bravery in saving Ayana, but also for his willingness to learn, help, and live in harmony with the people and the land. John's bond with the chief grew as well. The chief had become both a mentor and a guide. He shared stories of the tribe's history, taught John lessons about leadership, courage, and honor, and emphasized the importance of community above all else. John listened carefully, understanding that these teachings were not just lessons for survival, but for life. The chief's approval and guidance became a compass for John, helping him navigate his new life and responsibilities. One day, as John and Ayana walked to gather herbs along a distant ridge, the chief approached them. He called John aside, speaking with a serious but warm tone. "John," he said, "you have become part of our people. You live with honor, respect, and courage. You have earned a place in our hearts and in our lives. Your journey with us is only beginning, but know that you have proven yourself worthy of the trust we have given." John bowed respectfully, feeling the depth of the chief's words. He realized that the acceptance he had earned was not temporary or superficial. It was a permanent bond based on trust, character, and shared experience. Life in the village was now a blend of adventure, responsibility, and learning. John participated in hunts, where he tracked animals with patience and precision. He assisted in building shelters, preparing meals, and teaching younger members of the village some of the skills he had acquired during his travels. Every task, no matter how small, became an opportunity to contribute, to strengthen bonds, and to honor the trust the tribe had placed in him. Through these experiences, John felt a profound sense of purpose and fulfillment. Evenings were moments of reflection and connection. The village would gather around fires, sharing stories, songs, and traditions. John listened to tales of ancestors, battles, and survival, learning not just about the tribe's history, but about the values that had guided them for generations. He realized that bravery alone was not enough. Wisdom, compassion, and understanding were equally important. John absorbed these lessons with gratitude, knowing that they would guide him in every aspect of his new life. Ayanna remained a constant companion and friend. They often worked side by side, exploring the land, learning new skills, and sharing quiet moments by the stream or under the stars. Their bond grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. John admired her intelligence and grace, and she admired his courage and humility. Together, they became a team, supporting one another and deepening their connection to the tribe and its traditions. Over time, John also developed strong friendships with other members of the village. Young men who had once been skeptical now sought his advice and shared their skills and stories with him. Children looked up to him, inspired by the way he had become a part of the community and earned trust through action rather than words. Elders welcomed his participation and respected his dedication. John understood that belonging was not about titles or recognition. It was about contribution, respect, and living in harmony with others. The seasons changed, and with them, John's understanding of the land deepened. He learned to recognize the subtle signs of weather, the movements of animals, and the changing patterns of the plants. He began to understand the intricate balance that allowed the village to thrive, and he felt a sense of awe at the wisdom of the Apache people who had lived in harmony with this land for generations. Each day reinforced the importance of respect, patience, and observation. As time went on, John's connection with the tribe became stronger and more profound. He was no longer simply an outsider who had saved Ayanna. He was a trusted member of the community, recognized for his courage, integrity, and dedication. He understood the significance of this bond and felt honored to be part of a people who valued character above all else. His life had been transformed, not by luck or chance, but by his willingness to act with courage, respect, and humility. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep, tranquil blue, John stood with the chief on a high ridge overlooking the village. The river glimmered in the fading light, and the sound of the wind through the canyon created a peaceful, almost magical atmosphere. The chief spoke softly, his words filled with wisdom. "You have become part of us, John," he said. "Your courage brought you here, but your respect, patience, and understanding have allowed you to stay. Remember always that trust is sacred, and honor is earned every day. You belong here, and we are proud to call you one of our own." John bowed his head humbly, feeling the depth of the chief's blessing and the full weight of the journey he had undertaken. As night fell, John reflected on the incredible path that had led him to this moment. He thought about the dangerous cliffside where he had first encountered Ayanna, the moments of fear and uncertainty, and the careful steps he had taken to earn the tribe's trust. He realized that courage alone had not brought him this far. It was his willingness to act with integrity, humility, and respect that had opened the door to belonging and acceptance. Over time, John's story became known not just within the village, but also in surrounding communities. His bravery, coupled with his respect for the tribe's customs and his dedication to living honorably, inspired others. He became a bridge between worlds, showing that trust and respect could transcend differences and create bonds that were strong and lasting. People remembered him not just as the man who saved Ayanna, but as someone who had chosen to embrace a new way of life and honor the trust of a community that had welcomed him. John also found deep fulfillment in the friendships he had formed. He shared stories with the young members of the village, teaching them skills he had learned during his travels while also learning from their knowledge and experience. He participated in ceremonies, dances, and gatherings, not as an observer, but as a true member of the tribe. Every action reinforced the connection he had earned, and he felt a sense of belonging that was both profound and lasting. Iana and John continued to grow closer, their bond strengthened by trust, shared experiences, and mutual admiration. They explored the canyon together, learned from each other, and supported one another through challenges. John admired her courage, wisdom, and kindness, and she admired his humility, dedication, and willingness to embrace the tribe's way of life. Together, they represented the harmony that could exist between people from different worlds when respect and understanding were at the heart of their actions. Years later, John would look back on the moment he first heard the cries for help on the cliffside. That day had been the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that had led him to courage, trust, friendship, and a sense of belonging that he had never known before. The chief's offer, unimaginable at the time, had become a life-changing opportunity, allowing John to become part of a community that valued integrity, honor, and respect above all else. John understood that his life had been forever transformed. The cliffs and canyons, the river and forests, and most importantly, the people he had come to call family, had shaped him into a person who lived with purpose, courage, and humility. He had discovered that true bravery was not measured by the dangers faced alone, but by the choices made to act with honor, respect, and compassion. In the quiet moments, when the sun set over the canyon and the village settled under the stars, John felt a profound peace. He was no longer a stranger or an outsider. He was a trusted member of a community, part of a family that had welcomed him and shown him the meaning of belonging. His journey had begun with a daring rescue, but it had led to something far greater, a life full of connection, purpose, and love, shared with people who had chosen to trust him completely.